What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate, and I continue to be, what's the word, man? Just like so proud of what Living Corporate has become, right? We started off as the singular podcast 4 years ago, publishing on like a semi-monthly basis, to really being an entire network of shows, all focused on centering and amplifying Black and brown folks at work. And you know, this whole like topic of equity, inclusion, and even organizational justice, it's so broad, right? It gives us so much space to explore and talk about a variety of different topics. And it encourages a variety of brands to want to work with us as we mobilize different branding campaigns to spotlight their leadership or spotlight the work that they're doing to create a more equitable world. And so I'm excited because what you're about to listen to is an episode continuing our Pfizer campaign that we actually kicked off last year. We're actually adding additional interviews to that campaign. We're going to add the Pfizer link to the show notes so you can actually check out all the content that we've done with them as part of this campaign. And this interview that you're about to listen to is a part of that. And, you know, this particular interview is with Yolande, who is an executive at Pfizer. She's really a part of their storytelling and marketing and branding team. She's been with Pfizer for some time. Like, she actually has a really storied career at Pfizer. We talk a lot about authenticity. We talk about, sponsorship, mentorship. We talk about lifting as you climb. We talk about a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, we had a good time. We cut up a little bit too. It was fun. So I want to shout out to the Pfizer team. I want to shout out to, I'm not gonna name nobody because I don't want to embarrass nobody, but y'all know who you are. Shout out to the Pfizer team. And I'm excited about y'all hearing this conversation that we had. And we're just gonna get right to it, okay? I really want to make sure we get to this conversation with Yolande, and we'll talk to you soon.
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Listen, now let's start with the elephant in the room. All right, you've been with Pfizer for nearly 20 years. All right, how have you stayed at Pfizer for almost 20 years? I'm not gonna put the 20 on you, but how?
I know, because that makes me feel old. Like,
you're not old.
20.
You're not old.
20 is a big deal.
I was really. Can I keep it 1,000? You know, black don't crack, but it do bend sometimes, you know. And so I saw you on LinkedIn. I was like, this is too, what? This is crazy. Sometimes 20 feels like a big number. It's like, I was like, what was your journey to get here and stay here so long?
So shout out to Inroads, because I was an Inroads intern literally 20 years ago. So I started my internship 20 years ago. So give me a little, So it was an internship, and I'll be completely honest. Like, I was not looking at pharma. I had interned for other companies. I started doing I worked with Capitol Records. I thought I was going to do PR and marketing, and I was working as a marketing intern also with Inroads for another company, real estate company. And I remember we had some kind of intern gathering, and a friend of mine was talking to someone else, and all I heard was, yeah, I get a car for my summer internship. And I was like, you get a what? And that was it. I spoke to her. Her name is Lauren. She's still one of my best friends to this day. She also works at Pfizer. But when she told me that Pfizer interns got a car for their summer internship, it was a wrap. I said, sign me up. I went to my intern relationship manager. I said, give me an interview with this company. And literally, I planned to only be here for 2 years. I was like, okay, I'm going to get this sales money. I heard they pay well. I'm just going to get this and then go on and do something else. That did not turn out that way. Not only because it's a great company and I formed a lot of really great bonds, But I've been able to reinvent myself over the past 20 years, right? So starting off in sales, doing sales in Brooklyn of all places, and then I was able to go to Rwanda and spend 6 months as a global health fellow doing communications and media. And that's when I was like, I need a career change. This is what I need to do. I belong in communications after that experience, not only just living in rural Rwanda and interviewing patients and providers, and just like literally seeing how people live in sub-Saharan Africa, and really valuing like a company like Pfizer that sends me and gives me that experience, but coming back and saying, oh, hey, I still want to work here. And how can I make that happen? And I was able to reinvent myself and have a second career in communication. So it has been 20 years, but it's been a lot packed into those 20 years.
Well, I would imagine like because of your diversified background, that like coming into a communication / storytelling role, which we're about to get into in a minute, like you having that more like go to market or market facing background, I would imagine gives you even more, like gives additional depth and dimensionality to the work that you're doing today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I think when I came into communications and came in, in content creation, and I don't know why, but a lot of like communicators are introverts. At least that was the case when I walked into the office, and I wasn't used to even working in an office. I was used to being out and about, like literally in the streets, selling these meds, selling these drugs.
Outside, yeah.
Outside, I was outside. And so coming in, it was actually, I think, people weren't used to someone like me coming in from sales and like, hey, how you doing? Big personality, who could also write and tell stories. And I think that has been what has helped me in this, because I love talking to people. Like this podcast, this opportunity to speak to you, I'm excited, right? I just got off another call with a partner organization where I was interviewing them. So, a lot of what I did in sales was talking to physicians and patients and telling them about our product. And a lot of what I do in communications is talk to people and tell them about our work. And it's, in a sense, I'm selling a different product, which is our company, to employees and to people like you.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about about your role, right? Like Pfizer is this huge brand. You and I were just talking about this off mic. Pfizer is honestly, of all the brands that like Living Corporate has had the pleasure to work with or have leaders to like interview and things of that nature, Pfizer feels like the most, like the hardest to wrap your arms around. Like there's so many opportunities to tell all types of stories. Like, what is your role in leading that effort?
No, you're absolutely right. There are so many stories, and I think one of the things that I love about my job is it is so diverse because our population is so diverse. So we have 80,000 colleagues around the world, right? So on any given day, I'm telling a story about a colleague or a patient. So few examples, a recent story that I did was for World Refugee Day. So we have this refugee leadership initiative, right? Basically, we hire refugees and give them jobs. So I interviewed a colleague, someone who works for our company, who literally worked with the State Department last year to escape Afghanistan. And the first thing he did within weeks of escaping Afghanistan was start working at Pfizer. And I was in awe of his story, like growing up in Afghanistan, when the Taliban came in, like living in Kabul. And then there's a joint interview with him and someone from the State Department who helped him escape. And just literally listening with my eyes, like, I was like, I'm having an Oprah Gayle King moment right here. This is like top-notch stuff that you don't expect, to encounter in a day-to-day when you're interviewing somebody you work with, right? So that's one example of a type of story that we tell to our internal audience of colleagues and externally as well. Another is a recent interview that I did with a colleague in Italy who had throat cancer and lost her voice. and she works in procurement, and she was scared that she wouldn't be able to keep her job because she couldn't speak to customers, she couldn't speak to anyone. So, long story short, she was able to work with our digital colleagues to develop a solution, like, literally using mics and podcast equipment similar to what we're doing, so that she could be heard over our Teams and WebEx calls. And so I interviewed her, and just even we call these stories like profiles in courage, profiles in joy, profiles in excellence, right? So literally profiles on our values and people who are living our values. But I'm always inspired by, like, wow, like you really are courageous and stepping up and doing the things that we say people should do, but not everyone does it. So I have an opportunity to literally be on the front lines of people who are doing courageous things, people who are doing things to move the needle, help patients. So it runs the gamut. I recently also wrote a story on somebody who is autistic and dealing with neurodiversity, and what it's like for her, in this world of like not being normal, and trying to tell other people this is how you can relate to somebody who maybe has ADHD, or somebody who has all of these different kind of quirks, or what we call quirks, but they're actually things that make them stand out and make them work differently, but work with excellence. So, as I said, it's all different kinds of stories, which for me helps fulfill my passion inside of not every day looking the same. So I'm not just saying like, how do you like working here? And they're like, I love doing my 9 to 5 and blah blah blah. It's some of it's really exciting.
My own experience, like in corporate communications, is that it takes collaboration across the enterprise to really tell good stories, to really have the conversations that might be uncomfortable, but are really going to be impactful to your audience, even if it's only internal. And I'm really curious, like, what have you learned about relationship building and cross-functional coordination in your experience? Because you do not exist like on an island to yourself. You're having to go and like talk to other departments and leaders, and like you have to get them to agree to sit down and have a discussion with you. Like, what does it look like to build? Like, what have you learned about just relationship building and collaboration in your time in this role?
Relationship building is essential. It's something that I learned in sales. Like, if I don't make if I don't build a relationship with the receptionist and the front office, I'm not getting back there to see the doctor, right? There's no way. She's literally has to be my best friend for me to get my job done. And similarly, when I think about relationships in terms of how to tell these stories, I have a really great relationship with our digital team, because they're the ones that own the platforms. They're the ones that make, we use Open Reel to shoot a lot of our virtual content. So it's a lot of digital equipment. And it's because of that relationship with digital that I heard about Maria's story, the colleague in Italy, right? It was just a standard update that they were giving the meeting about tools that they were getting ready to roll out. And they said, we're rolling out these tools for colleagues with disabilities, and it's because someone reached out to us with throat cancer and couldn't speak. And I said, wait, there's a story here. And that's how I was able to get that story. So building relationships with everyone that I work with, whether it's our digital counterparts, people in people experience, to learn about how they're recruiting new colleagues, like what are the benefits for our colleagues in different things. Relationships with corporate affairs. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have a relationship still with our corporate affairs colleagues that I used to work with, right? So I find that relationship is essential, and there's no one too small or too big, right? Whether it is, I have relationships with all the admins that I work with. I have relationships with, the chief of staff for our executive leadership team, right? They all work together to tell a great story and to gain access to places and things that I wouldn't otherwise have.
You know, you're also the communications co-chair for Pfizer's global Black community. That sounds very important. Okay, let me say, what does that work entail, Yolanda?
It is, honestly, sometimes I'm like, it it is a lot, honestly, but it's something that I do because I love Black people. Like, what can I say? And I want us to win, right? It was Issa Rae that said when they asked her at the Emmy, she's like, when they said, "Who do you want to win?" She said, "I'm rooting for everybody Black," right? And that's me because as part of, yeah, listen, that's why we're here. Um, one of the things that I really love about co-leading communications for our global Black community is that I get to see Black excellence on display every day. So that is our colleague resource groups brings together all of our colleagues in marketing, in finance, in legal, in corporate affairs, in every area of life. Like I work with we have some really dope like scientists who are Black. Like to be able to say that, this scientist worked on the COVID-19 vaccine, like, and I know her through this global Black community is something that brings me joy, right? Because we have such a community of people who lead with excellence every day. And I get to tell their stories. I get to say, you know what, during Black History Month, so our theme for this year for Black History Month was Black excellence. And we try to put Black excellence on display. Like, here are our manufacturing colleagues who literally are our shift workers, our line workers who were working tirelessly through the COVID-19 pandemic. Here are their stories, right? Here's a story of, and then there was a colleague who he was a generational Pfizer colleague. So he was in manufacturing. His parents started in manufacturing. So he started working at the company since he was like 17, 18 years old because his parents used to bring him to work. And now he has a legacy, right? So I get to kind of learn more about our colleagues from all walks of life and to be able to tell their stories. But then I also get to kind of work with our DEI team and our leadership team. And what was really great is during the COVID-19 pandemic and everything that happened with George Floyd, we were able as a resource group to sit down with our CEO and really say, this is what it's like to be Black at Pfizer. And he listened, he learned, and he made changes. And, there's no other, I think, group that would give us that audience. But we, as a collective, we are so much stronger, and that we are able to have these audiences with our executive leaders and really champion and kind of put forth our desires and intentions for the Black community.
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. That's first of all, you said something that's very rare, and I'm so again, this is living corporate, all right? So Yolanda, so I'm not. We having real conversations around here. You see what I'm saying? So let me say this. The first thing I'll say is
We are.
we have real conversations. This is funny. We have this is one of the funnier interviews I've had. But I'm gonna say this though. What I've noticed is like with Black folks, like this is just and you might be like, Zach, that's not fair. And I want you to tell me if you think it's not fair. What I've noticed is that if you're like when I meet work with Black people and they've been in the same organization for more than like 10 years, they don't be rooting for everybody Black. It's kind of like they kind of create their own little ecosystem and they kind of they might have a couple people that they kind of rock with, but they're not really trying to uplift. So what's exciting to me is what I'm hearing from you is that you're still, I don't like, there's just something that happens. I don't know what it is, Yolanda. Like if it's like, I don't know if it's just like you end up drinking the Kool-Aid too much or you just kind of become numb to it or you have if it's survivorship bias, but it's easy, I think, to kind of like not continue to think about the collective as you rise up. And so it's dope from what I'm hearing is like, there's this effort and mindset and attitude to still, to create voice and platform and space for other people that look like you. It's easy, I believe, to like, just to kind of leave folks to the wayside, right? Like, you have your life gets in the way. You got, you have your own bills to pay. You have your own career goals. And so I just think it's really cool that there's still like collective, sort of collective organizing happening to still really push and amplify the voices that may go unheard. So that's really dope.
No, and thank you for saying that because I have been on the other side of those experiences that you mentioned, where I remember one time, I was when I was still new to kind of corporate, I was coming out of sales, and there was this leader. She was a phenomenal woman. Like, I love, first of all, like women that dress well. So like when you see her walking down the hall and the suit is sharp, the heels are high, and you're exactly, and you're just like, you look at her and you're like, I
Yeah.
want to be her. Like I want to be like her. I don't want to take her job. I just want to be like her. Like she's a great role model. And I remember reaching out, and initially she was like warm, and then I guess I was reaching out too much because then
Yeah.
she was just got too busy all of a
Yeah.
sudden. It was, my meetings were
Right.
declined, and I remember how that felt. Like I was like, really, like
Right.
really. Like you don't even understand how much you inspire me, right? And to have been in that position of like, feeling the shade a little bit, I don't ever want somebody else to feel that from me
Right. I
because
know what you mean.
I'm really not that, like I'm not Michelle Obama. I'm
Right.
not, you know what I mean? Like,
But you're that though, like in terms of you're inspiring a bunch of people that they'll never tell you, right? And so like it's dope because you're in that position now, right? Like
and so that I feel the responsibility of that, right? So I feel the responsibility of mentoring interns. Like, one of the things that I had the opportunity to do this summer, and especially because it was like my 20th anniversary as an intern, I was really like, I hired an inroads intern this summer, and I was like, I'm paying it forward. And then having the opportunity to mentor him, daily. Like we had morning huddles, and I was like, listen, this is what you're not gonna do, and this is what you're gonna do, right? And also, we have this program called Breakthrough Fellows, which is a phenomenal program for that Pfizer pays for there. That was launched actually by our CEO during right in response to everything that happened in 2020. But we hire them as interns; they get full-time positions, and we pay for their grad school. Like they get to go back to grad school full time. So I had one of those fellows who came in, and I was mentoring her, and to be able to have her come to me and say, you know, in her group, there's no one that looks like her. And for me to show up with my braids, she had her braids, and I was like, listen, because there was a time where I didn't even feel comfortable wearing braids like in sales or anything because I thought it wasn't professional. But what I love about having been here 20 years is that I'm comfortable with who I am. As Beyonce said, I am cozy in my skin. And because I am cozy in my skin, cozy, cozy, and because I'm cozy and comfortable in my skin, then like I can say that I love people who look like me, and I root for them because it doesn't take away from the relationships and the things that I have with non-POC colleagues, right? Because I root for them too, and they know that. But I also know what it means to be a Black intern coming into a company like Pfizer and feeling not enough and feeling like you have to be something that you're not. And you have to talk about, oh my God, I had a ski trip this weekend and I did like all of these things. And oh my gosh, like to try to feel like you're on the same level as people who have been like vacationing with the Kennedys since like, since they were born, right? And I didn't come from that background. But now I can say, yeah, I grew up in East Flatbush and I'm from Jamaica and it is what it is. But look at me now, right? And feel comfortable in that. And so that's why I can have the rapport that I have with everyone, whether it's an admin, whether it's a CEO, because I show up as myself.
there's just so much. There's so much there, and it's interesting because like we were making jokes at the top of the conversation about like being old. It's funny because based on just like high level of like your timeline and you're like how long you've been at Pfizer, your internship, and then my timeline, we're roughly the same age. And I wonder, like, do you ever feel so I'm just now realizing that I'm not like super young, right? So I'm 33, so I'm like I'm young, but I'm not like super young. And so then when people hit me up and they'll be like, oh, like they ask me questions and I'll say something like, we're like the same age, right? And they'll be like, no, I'm 24, and I'm like, oh, and like, and they're asking me for advice, and I'm like, oh, I thought we were having a conversation, like, you know, kind of like we're doing the same things. They're like, oh no, like I look at you like this, and I'm like, and it's funny because like I feel you is that like, man, I'm starting to step into the role that I was looking up at people at, right? It's like kind of like, oh, okay, they're a little like they have the experience and they're doing some things I'm interested in. They're not like, I'm not like the seasoned vet yet, but it's like you're not the youngest person. So what does it really mean to like continue to look to lift as you climb? And so that's dope. Like being clear with like who you are. I agree with you. Being cozy enables. Come on, Beyonce. Listen, you know it's crazy. Beyonce is so great. You know, like, let's pause about it. Like, let's talk about this on this sponsored campaign. Beyonce is so great that so people don't know this, but really, frankly, Yolande, the reason why I've been so successful is because I consider myself a super Virgo. Me and Beyonce actually have the same birthday. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and so,
okay.
Yeah. And when Renaissance dropped, it's almost like all the other seasons, it's like it's just been Virgo season since then, and like it's just continued. I felt so great, and the fact that like we can really reference her song in a real way. But I mean, it's true. Like being comfortable with who you are enables and empowers you to just really be at your best, right? Like I think like you're 100% right. Like there's this internalized pressure and sometimes externalized pressure of like needing to overperform. Be that in how you show up and how you speak and how you communicate, to also feeling like you need to go above and beyond your job, when it's like sometimes it's best for you just to do the role you were hired for and just do that well, right? And like, but there's so much pressure that we have, and so
so much pressure.
What you give off to me, and I could be wrong, is I sense that you work hard. I mean, obviously you've reinvented.
I do, because I was gonna say I still
you still work hard. You still work hard. You still work hard. But and I was gonna say but I do also sense balance. Sometimes you talk to people and they have like this really nervous energy, like say, yo, like calm down, like take a break, like that's I haven't sensed that from you at all, and so I think there's something there too. Is like there's this again, like I think we're, especially if you come from like historically marginalized, depressed backgrounds, like you're told. And like for a bunch of really real reasons. So like I'm not gonna say that our parents and grandparents and things were wrong, but like, hey, you got to work 5 times harder. You got to work, twice as hard to get half as much. Like all those different things, and it's like, okay, like, but that isn't. But Absolutely. That's not. And as viscerally and sadly real as that may be in different contexts, it's also not sustaining for your soul, right, over time. So you have to figure out, okay, what does balance look like? Anywho, look, I want to keep going.
And I was going to say this as we talk about balance, because that is a part of why I lift as I climb, because I can't do it all by myself. I think that if I thought I could, I would be burnt out and just a sad, anxious, depressed person, right? But having that collective, having people, whether it's a GBC or my team, I have a phenomenal team that I work with, having people that I can lean on and call and say, hey, I need your help with this, or even just having them shadow me or work with me, that creates that balance. Because then, like I just did last week, I went on vacation, I didn't check email, I was fully off. And there were times before in previous years where I would be on vacation and have my laptop. Like I wouldn't even leave the country without my work laptop. I would bring everything with me, because just in case, like there's an important email that I need to answer or something that I need to send immediately. But now I'm like, listen, I leave those out of, I said, I will not, I'm out of the office, unreachable. And I think when I did the vacation like I think in July when I did a self-care solo retreat, and I actually linked to like something on like mental health in women in the workplace about how we need to leave them alone while they're on vacation. Very subtle. But I'm that person that I'm like I've worked hard, but I've earned my time off, so I'm gonna take it. And for a week, don't call. I'm unreachable.
Well, it's, I mean, because here's the thing, like, you can't be at your best if you're grinding 100% of the time. Like, we're human beings.
Nope.
Like, we're not
Nope.
automatons. We're not robots. We have to.
Yep.
And here's the other thing is, I was just reading about this too. First of all, we're all creatives. Like, but like when it's the free time and the space that you give your mind to like really break from doing whatever the tasks are, that then give you additional, that enable you further to come back and continue to innovate. You can't just be doing that 24/7. You got to give yourself time to rest. So let's talk about this though, right? Because we're talking about storytelling, and you and I having offline conversations about storytelling, and you've been leading various types of communications, internal, multimedia campaigns, and I would imagine because of your tenure that you've seen like different you've seen different folks try different storytelling in different ways. I'm curious, like, what are some of the common mistakes you've seen organizations make when it comes to effective storytelling, especially when it comes to Black and brown folks' stories?
Listen, listen, listen. Okay, so I'm gonna be real, you know, and actually, it's something that I learned when I was in Rwanda, because typically when you see stories about people in sub-Saharan Africa, right? You remember those like old commercials, and there'll be like flies on their faces, and people thought you need to see sad, depressed people for you to, give them money, right? For you to feel sad for them or sorry for them, right? And I remember it was in speaking to my colleagues at this project that I was working with in Rwanda, and they were incensed because they were like, "What about our dignity?" And that has been something that has carried through, especially when it comes to telling stories about marginalized communities, is always, always, always like so much has been taken already. Do not take their dignity. So using photos, using images, like showing them as whole people, like making sure, yeah, they might have this, like I remember, a few years ago, we went to, I did like an on location shoot in Philly with like this patient named Kyle who had sickle cell disease, and we were in his house, you know, and I mean, it was a normal house, right? But I remember like his mom was just like so conscious, like, because we had full camera crews in their home. And, but I was also very protective of the images that we showed of their home and the things that we pull through in that final cut, right? Because I didn't want them to feel like we have this disease that has like robbed us of so much, and here it is, like people on top of it are going to be like, oh, these like poor black people and this poor community, and you know so that's the thing that I always try to portray, or that's like the boundary that I do not cross, is like making sure that we leave people with their dignity, making sure that they show up, we show them as whole people, not just like sad little stories. And there was a time recently, and I saw it on some, it was like on social media, and it was like another organization, and I just remember thinking it was like this photo of this black woman, and I was like so angry. I was like, why would you use that photo of her? You know, like why? And so I'm very, very conscious, and we have guidelines for our photos and our images and our videos. We have guidelines in terms of like the kinds of images that we want to put out, the kinds of video, even in speaking, right? Like the things that we put out to our colleagues internally and also to the external public. So that's just the thing that I always am very passionate about and very protective of, is making sure that um, we show up and show us people of color and marginalized communities as whole people. Yeah, we go through struggles, but we're just like everyone else. We have the same desires, the same goals, and we deserve that dignity.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, to that point, I know a common critique that I've seen, as well as that I've experienced just working in corporate America, is a lot of times when it comes to like storytelling and PR and communications, the insides don't always match the outsides. And so I'm curious, like, what does it look like for you as an executive to drive accountability so that there's coordination between the internal messaging and the external messaging at Pfizer?
No, absolutely. And when you talk about the insides not matching the outsides, it's funny because I think there was a time where I would get emails from literally people I didn't even know all around the company, like, "Hey, Yolande, I'm working on this campaign," and I knew what that meant. Okay, so there are Black people in the campaign, and you want me as like the person to review this content to make sure that it is okay, like Black people. So I'm the voice. I become, you become ultimately like the voice for all Black people, right? And you're like, is this okay? And this is okay. And at first you're like, okay, this is like a cool thing. I get to, and then I'm like, wait, there needs to be more, because I cannot be the only person that is looking at this content to represent everybody, because I miss things. I will miss things, because you see, sometimes you see, um, some campaigns and people on social media are always like, yeah, there must not have been a Black person in the room. And I'm like, sometimes there are funny enough, sometimes there are Black people in the room, but either they don't speak up because everybody else is like, "Oh my God, this is great. What do you mean?" They get talked over, like, "Oh no, this is not a big deal." Because I have been in certain rooms and certain things, and I have said, "No, we don't. We should not be doing that." And sometimes people have listened, and sometimes they've not listened, right? But I think it goes back to, there always just needs to be more of us, right? Tokenism doesn't work. And I can proudly say that I work on a very diverse team, you know, and that's intentional. That it takes intentional leaders. It takes people who are saying, like, I need different eyes, I need different ears on this team. We can't all think the same, we can't all look the same. And so that way, the inside of the organization, the people, our colleagues, our 80,000 colleagues, represent the billions of patients around the world that we serve in sub Saharan Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in South America, all around the world. And that just needs to be happened, but that takes intention.
I the other piece is like, let's say it's me. I'm gonna be extra fun. It's me, you, and like 30 white people in a room, right? And it's like some Pfizer campaign, and it's something crazy, Yolande. Like, it's something just out of control. And they go, "What do you think?" Like, depending on our relative proximity to power, our social capital, and other things, we may not say something even though we're deeply uncomfortable. Or we may raise concern, but we may not raise it as vehemently as we feel, because just the power dynamic of being Black in such a potentially intimidating space, like, it's real. And like, I think, to your point, like, that's where having just one or two is not enough, and having true representation, and not just representation to say, hey, I think, but frankly, the power and control to say, hey, here's what the story needs to be. And even if you don't see it that way, I need you to trust this group of people, because you're telling a story that represents these people. And I think like that's where I've seen like the rubber meet the road a bit when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion is sometimes it's like sometimes it's almost like folks they don't want
Talk about it.
yeah, we're gonna talk about it. Sometimes it's almost like folks they just want to be able to check the box that they talk to some black and brown folks, but they're not necessarily truly trying to cede any power to black and brown people. And like when you talk about true like equity at work and you talk about true organizational transformation, it's about empowering groups by literally ceding power, not by like giving them a kiddie seat at the table or patting them on the head, but saying, hey, actually, this domain, we're going to just, that's y'all's to manage and run as you see fit. We'd love to be there to sponsor. We'll be there to help provide oversight, or rather coverage. We'll help block and tackle. But when it comes to the actual decision making, you are here, you're an employee, you're a leader, and we're going to trust you to really do that. And I think when I think about like the future of work and I think about just Gen Z period, especially black and brown folks, but really Gen Z across the board. Like I think about my siblings, I foresee them looking for more of that, more empowerment and not just inclusion. Like, hey, we included you. It's like, okay, yeah, you included me, but I should be the one making the decision. You know what I mean?
So can I tell you, Gen Z ain't scared. They are not afraid. I don't know if it's because TikTok has empowered them. Listen, they are not scared because they show up. And what I actually love about our company, and especially someone who was an intern, like our leaders love interns. Like they literally, like the interns sometimes have more say because because they want to know what Gen Z thinks. Like everybody wants to be seen as cool, right? Like they do. And so they really do. So when our interns come in, they're not they empower them to say like, what do you think? Like, how is this? And they speak up. And so in actuality, I think sometimes our younger colleagues, because they don't know that fear of somebody who maybe is like 30, 35 years in the game and looking toward retirement, who's like, maybe I'm just gonna sit in my seat and not say nothing because I want to keep this job. Gen Z, they think that they'll go out there and get another job tomorrow. So they do not care and they will tell you how they feel. So and it also goes back to, as I said, like being cozy in my skin because I'm at the point, I don't care who's in the room. And sometimes it could be to my detriment, but I now have a reputation for just saying what's on my mind. I do it with respect, right? But I'm like, no, no, that's not going to work, or no, that's not a good idea, and here's why. So I assume that if you invite me in the room, you want to hear what I have to say. Like you're not just there to I'm not just there to fill a quota. I'm there to be seen, heard, and heard. And so I'm going to speak up because at the end of the day, I got to answer to my group chat, right? My group chat will call me out.
That's
What is
important though.
Pfizer doing?
But see, that's important that you have
I'm
people
more
around
scared of my group chat than my leaders.
but that's important that you have people, like I feel like I heard it on some stand up. This was a long time ago. Like, everybody got a yes man. You got to have people in your circle that are no man. Like, nah, man, don't do that.
Right.
Nah,
Right.
you looking crazy. Don't do that. You looking
crazy.
Yeah, you looking crazy.
Listen.
Don't you? Yeah, your paycheck might be. You looking crazy out here, and you need to stop. Right? Yeah. So that's important to have those people to hold you accountable in a loving way, and in a communal way. But like, that's also important. Like, as you continue to grow and climb, like to not forget your people because they'll tell you.
And can I just say this? A powerful example of just the group chat collective, right? Because this is a conversation that I had with another colleague because, Juneteenth was made a federal holiday last year. And shout out to Opal Lee because we had her as like our keynote speaker this Juneteenth. But this Juneteenth, 2022, was not a holiday at Pfizer. It was actually also it was observed on the 20th. which is also World Refugee Day. So I was going into work to tell Afzal's story and to kind of launch this video that we were doing. And I remember like all my friends in the group chat, and they're all like talking about what they're doing, and some of them are meeting up for brunch and things like that. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm going into work. And they're like, what? Pfizer did not give you the day off? What? And I remember talking to like another colleague, and she was like, "Yeah, my friends were like, oh my God, you don't have the because now Pfizer is this big company. Whereas before the pandemic, people were like, where do you work? And after the pandemic, they're like, oh my God, you work for Pfizer? So now they're like, what? Pfizer did not give you Juneteenth off? Who do we need to speak to? All that to say, that day, our chief people officer and our DEI lead, our chief diversity, equity, and inclusion lead, I let them know. I said, "This is what my group chat is saying about Juneteenth." When I saw them at the event, now 2023, Juneteenth is going to be a holiday at Pfizer, and we have the day off. I'm just saying. I have to think the group chat played a part.
Come on, come on. Listen now. First of all, we talked about a lot. You're doing a great bit. Before I get to my last question, you talked about the fact you're from Jamaica.
Yes.
Okay, so look, I don't know how much you've listened to Living Corporate's library, so this is not appropriative. When we have a really incredible guest, they say something crazy. Sometimes we got to drop the air horns. This has been a fire conversation, and we're bringing back sound effects for 2023. I want to thank you. Look, before I let you go, again, you've been at Pfizer nearly 20 years. You don't give me like tired vibes. Like, it seems like you're still excited and like interested and like invigorated by the work that you do. Talk to me about like the next 12 months. Like, what are you really excited about?
Oh wow. I'm really, really excited about a couple of things. I'm excited about, as I said, we're kicking off Black History Month planning this month, trying to get ahead of the game for February. I'm just excited about all the great stories that we're going to tell. Being in person again, we're moving to a new headquarters, so I'm going to be. I think why I get excited is because I'm always working on something new, and every day is new, and working on different projects. So I'm excited, without revealing too much, about a few projects that I have coming up that are super exciting. And so I'm excited about all those things. But honestly, you know, as a person also of faith, like I just truly believe that the best is yet to come, right? So I wake up with that expectancy. Like I wake up with the expectancy, like, God, you're going to do something great today. And I think that's what keeps me from being worn out or tired or burnt out is like, oh no, today's going to be a great day. And affirming myself in that belief of God, you're going to do something amazing today, tomorrow, next year. It's my you think like what I've done in the past is great. Wait till you see what I do next. And that's like the mindset that I go into because I'm like, why not? If Beyonce can still put out albums like like her last album, how many years in the game, that number one that people are talking about even on this podcast, I can put out something even more phenomenal than I've ever done in the next year or so.
You need to be glad that my soundboard decided not to work just now because I got a whole bunch of keys. Like, dun, dun, gonna, hey, when you start talking about what God gonna do, you better,
Right?
come on now. Come on, talking about God. I love that. And you're absolutely right. No, having faith and hope in terms of just like continuing to progress, it's just, it's critical. Like your attitude, making sure that you're just not, you don't get too, you don't get too down. Yolande, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for being a guest. We look forward to having you back soon. You're a friend of the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Zach.
Peace.
Have a good one.
And we're back. Yo, shout out to Yolande Morris. I really appreciate her candor. I appreciate her availability, her willingness to just speak frankly on the record. And it's that type of dialogue that I continue to be proud of when it comes to living corporate. If you want to hear something that, like, you know, your legal team is going to love and give a bunch of thumbs up to, if you want to hear something that's not going to make you a little uncomfortable, if you want to hear something that doesn't center and amplify historically marginalized perspectives and experiences, then don't listen to Living Corporate, because that's what we're doing over here, right? We're creating content that is like specifically for the upliftment, the centering, and the amplification of historically marginalized voices, and as a secondary piece, the education of aspirational allies, right? That's what this is for. We're not having no fluffy conversations. We're here to push and drive authentic dialogues. That is the future of this space, right? Like, as we continue to like pivot away from like the corporate DEI stuff, as like Gen Zers continue to like be disillusioned with corporate America as a function, anything around diversity and inclusion needs to be authentic. It needs to be hard hitting. It needs to be actionable. It needs to be meaningful. So again, I want to thank Yolande Morris, and hey, we're going to have another one of these spotlights next month. So make sure you pay attention. Make sure you click the links in the show notes to learn more about Pfizer, learn more about Yolande. I love y'all. Catch y'all next time. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.